So if your banker died and the family said they couldn't find $145 million, would you be pissed?
Welcome to Squirrel Trails. I'm David.
And I'm Al.
Let's talk about cryptocurrency.
So in Canada, the cryptocurrency firm Quadratic CX had $145 million of currency that they lost because the owner died and nobody knows their password. So the Hacker News had an article this week by Mohit Kumar about a cryptocurrency firm in Canada that managed to lose $145 million because of a lost password.
That's a lot of cash.
Yeah, you'd think that they might have a little better control out of that, but not so much. So the background of this is the cryptocurrency firm of Quadratic CX had $145 million US stored in an offline wallet. Essentially, that's an external drive that they've got encrypted that isn't attached to the network. It's safer that way as long as you can get to it. But what ended up happening is when Jerry Cotton went on a trip to India, he died. And the family is now saying they don't have the password to get into all that currency. So essentially, that $145 million of cryptocurrency simply is no longer available.
Poof. It's all gone.
And it's not really all gone. It's just not accessible. It's all still there. Blockchains work the way they're supposed to work, but you can't get to those files because it's encrypted, and it's encrypted in a very secure fashion.
So, let's ask a question. So what kind of incident would we call this kind of a thing?
Well, I'd classify this as a single point of failure. There might be a number of other ways to consider this with access controls and such, but the reality is there was one point of failure in the process. One password, get to that data, one person had it, and they died. That's a single point of failure. Now, there's a lot of other single points of failure out there, don't get me wrong. There can be equipment, you can have networks. At your house, you have a single point of failure with the internet probably. You have one line that comes in. That's a single point of failure. When your internet line goes south, you can't get anything. Is that a good design? For a company, no. For you? Yeah, maybe. It depends on the level of risk you're willing to take.
So, this guy, he's the only one that has access to all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, he really is. In this situation, the way they had it set up was he had this one device that was encrypted. And it was what's called public key, private key encryption, so that it's really designed to be secure. And the one thing about secure, it's wonderful when it works, and it's horrendous when it works. In a situation like this, nobody could get to it. It's as secure as can be, but it's now created what we would consider an operational failure. The company simply cannot process that work. They can't give anybody the money back because they don't know who has the money.
So the wife can't do anything about this?
No, because the password is actually known only to them, and there's no other way to recover it. Within a private key situation like this, you're the only person that knows this. And this is an issue throughout the cryptocurrency environment. There was a situation in England a few years back that they talked about where an individual, an early investor in Bitcoin, had $1 million of Bitcoin. The password was in his desk. It was secure, it was safe, he knew where it was.
$1 million?
Yeah.
So what happened to his money?
Well, it's all still there. However, he cleaned his house and threw the desk away.
And forgot the
Password was in there. So he no longer has access to that $1 million of Bitcoin.
Cleaning. We should never do it.
Yeah, sucks to be him. So, yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Well, it's only $1 million.
It's only money, And yes, now he is a poor guy.
It's only Bitcoin.
Yeah, it could be worth $10 tomorrow. It could be worth $10 million tomorrow.
Early investors.
Yes. So it is a problem, and it is a situation. Passwords are wonderful things. We need to make sure that we've got them. We need to make sure that we're protecting our stuff with those. The challenge with any password is, where is it kept?
Yeah.
So how many passwords do you have at home?
I got my internet password.
Okay.
We got the password to the door, to get in the
Right.
front door.
Okay. Because you have a smart home.
I have a smart home.
Right.
So we haven't used a key in like 3 years now.
Okay.
So we have the password to the door, the alarm system.
Okay.
And then passwords for like if we need to access our electric and that kind of stuff.
So you got all sorts of online passwords.
A lot of online passwords.
Hundreds of them, probably.
Yeah.
Reality is, we have in our lives more passwords than we ever want to think about. And the question that would come into play, and this is simply an example of what would happen, if you were no longer available, you ended up dying or ended up in the hospital someplace, or simply got stuck on a desert island someplace, who knows? That might actually be good. I could
Right
do
about
that.
now, I might be okay with that.
Yeah, given that we live in Minnesota and last week it was minus 25, I'm cool with a desert island.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so you have all of those situations, and if you're no longer available, what's somebody going to do behind you? If I were to die tonight, and given at my age, given my job, given my kids, that could very likely happen.
Yeah.
So the question comes into play again, is to say, how do we actually, what would my wife do to be able to get to all the accounts that she needs to get? Now, from my situation, I've been married 30 plus years. We have a lot
Sorry
of...
to hear that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, kid. Love you,
And
Mom.
your mom will talk to you later. The situation is that we have a lot of joint accounts. It's not a problem. But if I were to have a lot of specialty investment accounts someplace where only I had access to that, there's probably some ways that we could get to that information, that she could file the right kinds of paperwork to get access to those files. But if it's a password, if it's electronic, and the only way to get to it is to know the password, like say something on my iPhone, you're stuck. There's just no other way to deal with it. You have to think about what your backup plan is for that.
Yep, right here. So what's your passwords? So we should share a password, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'll give my passwords to David,
Yep.
and he'll give his passwords to me. Yeah, not a chance. But there is a concept called escrow that comes into play. So I can't store my passwords so they're secure. An option, and one would wonder why these folks hadn't thought about it, was putting passwords in a safe that only certain people can get to. Kind of a glass break situation where it's secure. You'll know if somebody opened it up and got to the password. You have to think about what could go wrong. What are the ways that a problem can occur?
My wife might kill me.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with this topic, but very
Well-
likely. No, I'm kidding.
Technically, I mean, if you go in an article,
Yes.
right now, no one's trusting his wife.
And that's a wonderful point. So the thing that comes up out of this story is it even true? Because reality is, she's saying she has no access to the data. She's saying that they have $145 million in that cryptocurrency, but nobody can actually support that.
Do we trust? That's another big question. How can we trust? I mean, trust but verify is often talked about in our lives.
And-
But with this, I mean, we really can't verify.
Well, before I would use an electronic wallet, I would want to know something about the company that I was doing it. Well, this happens to be the largest Bitcoin exchange in Canada, so I should be able to trust them. But these places, you actually have to do your homework, and there's due diligence that you should perform to make that happen. You have to think about what could go wrong. There's a saying in life: glass is half empty, a glass is half full. Which side do you look at? Well, in my profession, I tend to start with is there actually water in that glass, or are you drinking something else? You have to think about the opportunities for failure. You need to think about when you're going to put money, even if it's a cryptocurrency, it doesn't exist, kind of, but it exists in every way that money does in a bank, if you would. It's electronics that are stored. You need to actually do your homework on that, and should you trust them, and why should you trust them? The story that's coming up out of this is, do we know if the guy even died?
That's a big question. I mean, it's $145 million. And he was on a trip and died. That often happens. Someone goes on.
I hope it doesn't happen often in your world. I'm going on a trip.
Right. So, how do we verify something like this?
Something to ask about is to get the background data on the company.
Okay.
There is items called SOC 1, SOC 2 reports, SOC 3s. Essentially, these are evaluations of a company's control sets. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing to maintain control of the environment?
Now that's great in your world, in a bank world, in
Right.
large companies, but in a app, this is all, again, this isn't a large bank. This is this guy running it.
It's $145 million. It ain't small.
But we're talking about cryptocurrency. I
Right.
mean, we're talking about an app that you download and you put your currency on.
So should you?
Do they actually fall under the lines? Would he actually be doing it? And who's in it? So is it going to actually go through all this, the SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3? Who's going to verify that? How do we know that that's been verified? Does he actually have to go through those steps?
Yeah, in what we call a third-party assessment, they actually would do that. You'd actually go to look at the company. If I'm going to invest money in a company, so as an example, I'm investing money in a company right now that I'm putting my retirement into. I'm actually gone to look at the company filings.
Yeah, but
Okay,
you're
I'm
a little bit cynical. So
Leave it.
the average person, I mean, if you're not a banker, you don't even know what a SOC 1, a SOC 2, a SOC 3 is. That's like pulling your the first drawer out of your dresser. SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. That's about it.
If you get the SOC 4, we have problems.
Yeah.
So, there are no SOCs.
SOC 4 is Thursday.
SOC 3 Thursday.
So you assume that it's online, it must be good. The app must be verified because it goes through the Google app or the Apple app. They verified this account. Apple Store, Google Store, they verified these.
Let's back up. What do they verify? In reality, they don't do a lot of verification. Simply because something is on an app store or is on the internet, you can't assume that it's good. In fact, to be honest, I generally start with assuming that it's not.
Well, again, so this is a single point of failure.
Right.
He's running it by himself, so his wife really isn't running the business.
Right.
It's just him. So, again, is he going to even take his steps?
To your point, David, it doesn't matter to him anymore.
It doesn't.
He died.
He died.
So,
So, in cryptocurrency, right now it's fluctuating up and down. So, a couple months ago, it was worth 10,000 per Bitcoin. Now it's like at 7,000.
Right.
So at first he started this. He was, oh yeah, great. I got 1,000 Bitcoins. I've got $20. So I don't need to go through the steps. When he first started, is he going to go initially? Oh, it's up and running. Great, up and running. Set it aside. As a wallet, you don't need to. Do you have to go through all these steps?
No, that's actually one of the challenges with fintech companies is there's not a lot of regulation over this process. Nobody actually is overseeing. In many cases, nobody is actually overseeing this environment. It's a buyer beware kind of environment. You actually want to do some homework with this to say, should I be using these things? Should I be trusting where I'm putting this into? And a couple of ways to manage that would be to diversity.
So Bitcoin and get a couple of other current cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I mean, you can use a handful of wallets. You can use 5 or 6 wallets. You can store those things over there. So therefore, if any one wallet goes away, you've only lost that part. You've what we call diversified the risk.
Sure.
And that's kind of a good idea to have in general. And you can't do that in a lot of places in life. I can only have one wife as an example.
In this state.
Good point. Other places, I can diversify more of that risk. I don't know if it'd be diversifying or increasing my risk though.
True.
So, but it is one of those things. You want to think about how you want to manage that risk. So how do we want to make sure that our passwords are protected? You want to store them someplace that's secure.
On a piece of paper.
Okay, and where's the piece of paper?
In an envelope.
Okay,
In a desk.
in a desk. That you're going to throw away.
Yeah.
So no, you should store it in some place that's safe. You know, a fireproof safe that you've got at home. You know, same places that you would put your passport, important documents, those kinds of things. You want to make sure that's there, but you want to ensure that there's not a lot of access to that. There are also password services that you can use, and those are something you may want to really think about. When I was doing this work a few years ago, one of the things that we used to talk about was having a safe in the Information Security Manager's office where the key system passwords were stored. It was locked, and only he and one other person had the key, and if it was ever opened, it would send out an alert.
Nice.
So you need to have those kinds of things. You want to be able to ensure that you can recover in the point of a failure, but know if somebody has actually used that situation.
So what are some ways that you have a single point in failure in your life or in your company? Go ahead and comment below if you want to. Let's start a conversation. So what other examples of a single point failure have you seen?
There's a lot of different ones I've run into. Some of the more interesting ones that I've found relate to infrastructure and utilities. In Arizona, we were doing an analysis of a bank's branches to ensure that there were always 2 lines of communication going into each branch. It's a requirement because communications are important to a branch. They have to be able to talk to the primary data center. So as we're looking at all the branches, it's looking good as we're in Phoenix, then we're in Tucson, wonderful. We get down to Sierra Vista and we say, hey, have you got 2 lines coming into here? And the guy says, no, we only have 1. And I went, so you have a single point of failure. And he says, well, the reality is the communication line between Tucson and Sierra Vista back then went through 1 microwave tower. So there was only 1 line. So if that microwave tower went down, every area in southeast Arizona went bye-bye. So that's what we would call a major single point of failure.
Yeah, especially in communications.
Yeah. People can be a single point of failure as well. In many cases, you have applications that are being run by a business that there's only 1 person that is able to maintain that system. Only 1 person knows where that, how the file structures are built because it's been written 25 years ago. And there's only 1 person that does that. And we'd think that that doesn't ever actually happen. But the reality is, one company that I was at several years ago, we had a gentleman retire 4 times. Because every time he'd retire, and we'd think we had all the information we needed, we'd start a major project, not so much. So we had to bring him back.
That sounds smart.
Yeah, it's expensive too, because we had to pay him as a consultant each time. You'd think at some point in time, we'd have thought about writing documentation.
Or rewriting it.
Oh, well, there is that. Hey, we tried to do that, and that project cost us $40 million, but we won't go there. That's a whole other story for another time.
Again, it's not quite as much as $145 million.
But single points of failure can be a huge issue. In this case, did the guy die? Did he not die? Don't know. We're still trying to figure it out. Was it simply a large Ponzi scheme, and the money never existed? That's a possibility as too. Something to think about.
It's called Bitcoin. Just kidding. That's called cryptocurrency.
Right.
The biggest Ponzi scheme out there.
So, and that is really one of the situations they had here, is they don't know if that money actually existed. Within the article, and I would encourage all of you to read the article, The Hacker News does a wonderful job on this stuff. Within the article, it talks about the fact that they did some analysis on the Bitcoin, on the blockchains associated to that, and it doesn't look like the money actually has ever existed. So it could have been a Bernie Madoff thing. Who knows? But again, things that we have to think about when we do business. So we'd love to hear your stories about in your company or within somebody you know, or even in your life where you have single points of failure, and we can actually talk about how to fix those things, the impacts of those, and what are some real live answers. Because right now, all I'm doing is asking embarrassing questions. I would love to actually help.
We would always love your comments. Help grow the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.
Take care, folks. Happy trails.